Hey, Denny Van here with Heartfelt Awakening. I help you accelerate your personal and spiritual development. We are going over part 2 of a 3-part series of the book, A Theory and Treatment of Your Personality by Dr. Garry Flint. And so we're going to go ahead and get started and dive into the mind map summary. So let me share my screen. And here we are. So as this being part 2 of a 3-part series covering the first 3 chapters that Dr. Flint provides to us for free on his website. So we will make sure that the link to that is available for you. I highly recommend downloading that or just get the book. Totally just get the book because there's so much more information that he goes into. But in part 1, we went over introduction, broken down into 10 chapters, and chapter 1, which is part 1 for the self-help reader. And today we're going to be going over chapter 2, an introduction to the process healing method. He gets into the story that, this was discovered in 1994. And what it's about, it's, first of all, the therapist educates and works with all aspects of the patient's personality to convince the aspects or parts to want treatment. So we talked about in the first chapter of the book what these aspects and what these parts are and how they're created within and maybe even separated from the main personality. And so we want all of these parts, all of these aspects to integrate with the main personality. And this approach is respectful to the patient and builds trust between the therapist and the patient. And this is very important for the next part of the education process. And he goes on to say that when all of the aspects are on the treatment team, so if you're working on yourself and you're reading through this, you are the patient, you are the treatment team, the full part of you, the conscious part of you, the unconscious part of you, and all parts of you integrated. And so all of the treatment team gives permission. And then the therapist teaches the patient's subconscious how to treat painful emotions. So this is the work that you do inside. And coming from a perspective that there's nothing that needs to be fixed, only integrated, because these parts and aspects, these different parts, they have knowledge and understanding. So at this point, the patient or the therapist, you're ready to ask the subconscious to use the treatment process to treat painful or difficult problems. Then you get into the education process, which is establishing rapport. And this is understanding the treatment team and the treatment. So it's an internal treatment team. And he quotes some research done by Sater in 1972. The treatment team, the notion of it is it's to organize all the parts of the personality into a cooperative group. And then it's arranging these parts in such a way that to cooperate is a major asset for the treatment process. And it makes it safer. And it's always necessary to discuss the reasons for treatment and to resolve the barriers. So we're going to get into some of the barriers. But the treatment team and the treatment, you want to introduce to organize all of these parts, because some of these parts are deep down that are not in our current reality, in our current experience. So there's no focus, awareness, and attention on these. And then they come up in our experience. So what we're doing is we're using the subconscious to organize all of these parts and to cooperate with the treatment team. And the treatment itself, and this is what the subconscious does. You don't have to do anything. The subconscious, once explained how to do it, it knows how to do it, and it will do everything. And it resolves barriers, integrates all the parts, and the subconscious strengthens all the positive coping behavior with the positive emotions, so no assets are lost. And then all parts are on the treatment team. So there's a cooperation that's going on here. All want the subconscious to learn the treatment process. So it gets to the point where we want success, we want to feel good, we want to release the pain. And how this is given to the subconscious is through a metaphor. And so the use of the metaphor, it teaches the subconscious how to do the treatment process. So the therapist teaches the subconscious with a practice issue. And if you read through the book, you're going through the transcript. He said, as you go through the transcript, you're already teaching your subconscious how to do it. So just reading it is going to be teaching your subconscious how to do this work. And it's something simple to help form a treatment plan, because you're doing the work inside. You and all of the parts, the conscious awareness, the unconscious, and the subconscious are all working together in cooperation in order to execute the treatment process. And so the subconscious is asked to treat the practice issue. And so you start with a practice issue, something benign. Maybe I'm afraid of speaking in front of an audience. You can focus in on speaking in front of an audience, have that bring up everything now into your current reality, your current, what you're focused in on. And then the subconscious is able to find strands intertwined, entangled with that go way back in past experiences. Then we take those past experiences and bring them into the now, and we do a massive rewrite. And so what the subconscious does is it's asked to treat the practice issue and remove the negative emotions associated with that issue. And this is all done under the surface. There's nothing you have to do other than give permission for this work to happen. This is the beauty of it. And so it gets into the difference between memory, dormant memory or active memory. And dormant memories are potentially active. So something in your external experience, you see something, you hear something, you smell something, you taste something, you feel something. Something's activated outside in your sensory world. And it goes back into a dormant memory that something happened before that is like this. So that memory now becomes active. That inactive memory, dormant memory, becomes active in the active experience. And then active memories are in the active experience. And these include both the active conscious and unconscious memories. So understanding the difference between these dormant memories that might have behaviors, unresolved trauma attached to them, they become parts or aspects. And what we're doing in a very loving way, in a very respectful way to yourself, is we're not telling you, you got to fix this. What we're doing is we're bringing it into the active experience and then asking the subconscious to reprogram it, releasing the negative part of it, but keeping its knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, and integrating that and sharing that knowledge between that aspect and the entire personality and the entire treatment team. And so when this happens, many people are just sitting and memories might be coming, or feelings in the body might be coming, or shifts may be felt, or sometimes nothing is felt. Only a different response comes when that same situation happens. And so during this process, we're building rapport. That means all the parts, all the actives, the healing team, the subconscious, everyone has to be on board. Everyone has to be on board. Everyone has to agree to join the treatment team and agree with teaching the subconscious the treatment process. So by this time, all of these parts, all of these dormant memories may now be brought into the active experience. And so what we do is we measure on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you? And this is how you can measure, track, and have a tangible difference in where you were, and then going through the process, and then at the end, where are you? So on a scale of 1 to 10, let's say for this practice issue, maybe you do a practice issue of speaking in front of people. On a scale of 1 to 10, where are you? Oh my gosh, I'm a 7. I just cannot. I trip over my words. I get the sweats. I lose my train of thought. You know, all of these things start coming up. Your focus, awareness, and attention is now put on it. Then we ask the subconscious to do the work. Next, we get into reasons for getting treatment and becoming one. So we need to have these reasons as we're building rapport, because there may be parts that come up that might not want treatments. So we need to give reasons for this, because we want this part to have a full consent, approval, full knowledge and consent, and understanding what this part is consenting to. So sometimes you have to give reasons for this, because this part, sometimes it's not logical. Sometimes this part is there from pre-birth, before we were even born, and might not understand. So he gets into the advantages of getting treatment for all parts, in case there's any parts that are resistant to treatment, because there could be a fear there. So some of the reasons why all parts will have more satisfaction and less pain. Isn't that what we all want? We want more satisfaction and less pain. And every single cell in our body wants more satisfaction and less pain. And so the main personality will stop having these intrusions or experiencing lost time. And this is when we dissociate. So we have these intrusions where something in our current experience is triggered, and then a hidden part now takes over the main personality. This is what it means by intrusion. And some of us who may have labels of or experience symptoms of PTSD, where something triggers you and all of a sudden these reactions and these behaviors, and you have no control. It's like something took over your body. So you might be able to relate that way. And so what's happening is we're asking this part that comes and intrudes on the main personality and has reactions and triggers and responses. Does this one want more satisfaction and less pain? And sometimes all parts need to have full access to the entire memory of the personality. There's nothing hidden in the personality. Everyone has access to everything. And doesn't everybody want access to this knowledge? And so when parts have shared memories, each part will experience running the body as one personality. And so what he means by running the body is when you have those intrusions, it's like this part comes, takes over the personality and takes over the body. So we don't want these parts running the body, but we want all of these parts integrated into the whole shared memory and one personality. And he talks about a mono personality is really the best way. And conflicts and distractions are removed and all skills are available. So sometimes these parts that are buried away, there's some survival skills in those parts. And so we want to include those positive coping skills into the main personality, instead of appearing, having reactions, and on survival skill mode without the main personality being involved. It's separate from it. So we want to have these conflicts and these distractions removed so that those skills are also incorporated in the main personality. The main personality is not is no longer hiding important information and will be safer. So if you tell a part that might be scared, hey, it's going to be safer. You don't have to hide anymore. And all information will be shared. And so this could be a reason to tell a part that might be resistant to getting treatment. And then monopersonalities succeed far better in realizing their potential than people who have many anemic or dissociated amnesic or dissociated parts. So definitely one personality is so much better than, whoop, here comes this personality, just took over everything. And now I'm doing things and behaving in ways that I wouldn't normally do. So this process, this treatment process, is going to address all of these. Beautiful. And then reasons for not wanting to join the treatment team. A part might think it will die. And even though you know intellectually, I know I'm not going to die, there may be a part deep within you that might think it's going to die. And a part might be afraid that it will have too much pain and may damage the main personality. So it's going to just bury the pain because it doesn't even want to bring it up again. It's going to be just too much. And so the subconscious is directed to only release. He goes into more details in chapter 3, but let's say we start to feel pain at 100 units, you can direct the subconscious to release 5 units at a time. So you don't even feel the pain. And 5 units at a time is integrated into the main personality. So some parts might be afraid that flooding into the current experience might happen, and it doesn't. Who wants to be a blithering, crying baby on the floor, crying away, and experiencing these emotions again? So where the subconscious is directed to actually control this process so that the main personality is not flooded with emotions. This is the beautiful part, because people are like, did anything happen? But then they're no longer having the reactions and the takeovers of these parts taking over the personality. So treating intense fear or pain. So the subconscious is taught how to safely treat these parts of memories of trauma or extreme pain. So again, if the main personality can barely feel 100 units of pain, so I can pinch you and say, that's 100 units of pain, and you can barely feel it. You can barely feel it, but you know there's a pinch there. That's 100 units of pain. So the main personality can barely feel this. So the subconscious, we can direct the subconscious to treat 5 or fewer units of pain during the treatment. So the main personality would not feel any of this pain. It won't repeat it again. It won't flood the current experience with all of these emotions. And so you know you can just barely feel a touch. You just ignore it. But there's big processing, massive reprogramming and change happening on such a deep level. And then joining the main personality, integrating trauma and the main personality involves the parts exchanging memories with each other. So they can exchange memory associations until the neural structures within the whole nervous system, and this includes all our 5 senses, all of the neural structures that are related to this part that has the trauma or the pain with it. So these memories are exchanged, and there's a memory association where the neural structures have identical memories associated with them. So all of these memories are shared. So now, teaching the subconscious how to treat these issues. We start with a test issue. We have to start with a test issue so that the subconscious understands how this process worked. And this allows you to assess whether the subconscious has learned how to diagnose and treat painful memories. And again, when all parts want the subconscious to learn how to treat trauma, when all parts want the subconscious to learn how to treat trauma, question again to see if there are any parts that are uncomfortable or afraid about the subconscious learning how to treat a trauma. And so in a lot of the work I do, I use money mindset issues, relationships, self-love, unworthiness. All of these things have a tendency to go back down to an experience we may have had at a very young age or sometimes before birth that is rooted in what's called a trauma, in its unprocessed parts. And when there are no objections at all, the subconscious learns the treatment procedure in a brief metaphor. So a metaphor is explained, and the mind might be going, I don't get it. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I don't get it. This is woo-woo stuff. That's the mind. That the mind is going to be, yeah, I don't get the metaphor. Or you might be able to visualize it, but the metaphor is not for the mind. It's for the subconscious. Once the subconscious gets the metaphor, then it knows what to do. It's been trained. After giving the metaphor, ask the subconscious to treat the previous identified simple issue. So we talked about speaking in front of people, speaking for an audience, speaking on stage. You know, you were 7, so now it begins to treat this on a lower level, on a deep level. So the treatment process. So now we're getting into the nitty-gritty here on the summary of the treatment process. So this is a diagram in the book and in the information that is given to the subconscious to help the treatment process. So this information involves fields that are useful for treatment. And these fields, the subconscious is told that the use of the bioelectric field created by the heart and information gained through the field receptors in the skin cells can help the treatment process. And in addition, he talks about there's some positive energy that's available in the brainstem and the pineal gland. So if you're a reality transurfer, this is referring to the plate or the plat, and then the pineal gland is referring to slides. So this is how you can integrate this work with reality transurfing, and this is how we've done this as well. So in this image here, and he calls it figure 2-1, it's the content of the memory includes the movie. Okay, so you have content on the left. There's a traumatic memory there. And here's the movie. What was seen, muscle, taste, auditory, smell, and touch. So we have a perception, what we've seen. We have a couple of negative emotions or traumatic experience. That's what those stars are. So we got a couple of trauma things in the perception area. And that means our heart rate went up because of the trauma. So now our heart is reacting. And then our eyes went down and to the right, let's say for a traumatic experience. So we wanted to turn away from it. So we had eye movement in there. And then muscle feedback, the tightness in our body, the tightness in our gut, whatever that is, the muscular feedback. And then dissociation, putting up that wall. And then sometimes we turn to drugs to keep this down, because we don't want this to come back up again. So as we go through and treat and have the subconscious treat this, so we have a memory substitution process using the tools moderated by the subconscious. So the subconscious sees it all. And the treatment can expand memories to reveal distortions or other inaccuracies, because when we're in a stress state, sometimes we're not seeing things as they are. We are seeing them as we are in a stress state. So sometimes there may be distorted memories or other inaccuracies. So after the treatment process on the right, treated memory. And again, we're looking at perception. We've let go of the negative perceptions, what we saw, and we replace that with positive things in what we saw, what we're seeing now, right now. What we're seeing now is that we're benefiting from the wisdom and knowledge of this part, and it's integrating with the wholeness. And then the heart rate. Before, the heart rate would go up when the traumatic experience would come into our current experience. Now the heart rate stays calm because it knows it's been integrated. It knows it's been accepted fully by the entire treatment team. And eyes down to the right. Now we have love. We come down into the right with our eyes looking down into the right with a space of love and a space of healing. Muscle feedback. Now, instead of the muscles tightening up, the subconscious reprogrammed it to relax. And no more dissociation, because now all the memories are shared, and there's no need to keep using drugs to distract you from what's coming up and wanting to be healed. So it's all integrated. So this is kind of a bird's eye view of what this looks like. And the subconscious knows what to do now. It knows what to do now. It's reprogramming the negative on the left with the stars, with the hurt stars, and replacing positive emotions from the present experience and releasing the past negative emotions from the past experience. So this is how powerful this is. So the subconscious can use these bioelectric fields created by the heart and information gained through field receptors in the skin cells and can help the treatment process. And so there appears to be some, he talks about this, and I think it's wonderful because reality transurfing is talking about this, and this is a PhD researcher talking about this. There appears to be some primitive positive energy available from the brain stem and a field from the pineal gland that helps treatment. So if you think about it, if you're a reality transurfer, or if you studied Kabbalah, we're talking about Da'ath, the gateway to knowledge, and the pineal gland is creating an image or a slide. Those two work together to and have powerful energy. This is your genie in the bottle part of you. This is a very powerful part of you when you activate this, very healing as well. And so he begins to address barriers and disorganization. So treating the parts and other bothersome issues can now begin. And sometimes once you begin to bring these into your current experience, sometimes barriers will show themselves. These are parts that wake up and then interfere with communication with the subconscious. So these disruptive parts have to be joined and convinced and helped to join the treatment team so that all of their memories, wisdom, and understanding can be shared with the entire treatment team. So sometimes something will wake up, and once that one thing wakes up, treatment has to pause until that one is talked to and told, you know, here's how you can make a knowledgeable consent decision and join the treatment team so you can get more of what you want and less pain. So this disorganization stops the treatment process. It stops the treatment process. And it prevents negative emotions associated with the target memory structure from changing. So that diagram we looked at, we're looking at a traumatic memory structure. And if something else comes up that hasn't been, you know, that is not joining the treatment team, it's a barrier to the whole process. So things have to be put on hold, focus in on that barrier, get it to agree to join the treatment team. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And you feel this, especially when you're doing the work on yourself. And I highly recommend starting to do the work on yourself. When you start to do the work on yourself, you start to feel it. And I use a pendulum. When I'm doing work on other people, I tend to use my right hand. When I'm doing work on myself, I tend to use the left hand. And you can use a barrier, you can use some kind of communication tool to communicate with this barrier. It will tell you yes, it will tell you no. You'll feel these shifts in your body. And he goes into more detail in that in chapter 3. But the goal is more satisfaction and less pain. Going back to the barrier. So to remove a barrier, it may involve explaining the function of the brain and how the barrier interferes with getting more satisfaction and less pain. So treatment in the active experience requires that the active experience be calm or organized so that the structure of the trauma doesn't change. So we don't want the structure of the trauma to change. Once the structure of the trauma changes, it's disorganized. Let's say, for example, a barrier appears or some part, another part wakes up. So you have to go back and make sure that that part that woke up joins the treatment team. So now an example of teaching the process healing method. How he does this is he does a patient therapist transcript, and he goes through and teaches the patient some muscle responses, using the responses of your hand, relaxing your hand on your lap. So I have my hand relaxed, both hands just relaxed on my lap like this, on my lap. And he says, raise your first finger, your pointer finger for a yes, your thumb for a no, your pinky for an I don't know, and your middle finger for I don't want to tell you, which I think is really cute. The middle finger is like, I don't want to tell you. But this, he uses an example of a transcript in going through with a patient, asking the patient questions, and then the patient responds using the muscle testing, yes, no, I don't know, I don't want to tell you responses. And the transcript, just reading the transcript, teaches the subconscious how to do the work. And so he begins right away, and he recommends that, you know, if you're working with patients, that you initially give all the reasons for being treated, especially in the beginning. Or if you're, when he says patient and you're working on yourself, you are the patient. And so he recommends that, you know, giving all the reasons right at the beginning. He says that I recommend that with your first treatments, the first time you go through this process, that you just go over all of the reasons for being treated. And he goes through, we went through all of those reasons for being treated, and then review most of the barriers to wanting to join the treatment team and to wanting treatment. This repetition of the treatment method will implant firmly these concepts in your memory. So keep reminding yourself all of the reasons to be treated, and then most of the barriers, because there may be barriers that come up that might surprise you, that were not gone over. He goes over general barriers. And so you want to go over all of those just in case there's some already there that can be woken up and dealt with right at the beginning. And then once he goes in, he starts the process of getting right into presenting a model of the development of the personality. So he shows a model and reasons for getting treatment and joining the main personality, and then addressing these barriers to join the treatment team. He goes over this several times. So he gives ample opportunity. You want to give ample opportunity, because sometimes parts that are asleep might just be waking up. So you want to give ample time and check in again, because as soon as one of these parts wake up, then there's disorganization and the treatment process is stopped. So here's an example of his treatment note. And in the transcript, he asks, I'm going to try and get all aspects of your personality to join the treatment team. all members of the treatment team will want their trauma treated, their positive qualities and behaviors strengthened, and positive emotions to work on a consensual basis to join the main personality. And he starts by giving a visual description of what I'm describing. And so he uses a piece of paper and he uses this image, and he says at the top, he draws the lifeline. And this point here where he shows is conception, and this is birth. So you can see the line where right underneath it says conception, that vertical line, and then the vertical line of birth. And sometimes after conception, our brain starts learning words and phrases. And then at birth, our senses become active. The objects and actions that we see and hear are linked to words. So we start to link things together to create structure, to really create language structure. And he goes on to say a language forms and continues to form throughout our whole life. And then A, where it has MP and then an A around it, that's main personality. And below it, S, is subconscious. So if you notice the dotted line with the S, it forms after conception but before birth. And then main personality kind of forms just before birth, but mostly after birth. So there's a main personality and the subconscious. So the subconscious has been there the whole time. And he goes on to say then shortly before birth or at birth, our main personality starts forming and continues to the present. So our main personality has been forming until right now. But we start learning in utero and continue to learn all our lives. So we know this. We know this is how the personality forms. And the formation of memories for the main personality is a mass. It's a conglomeration of what he calls memory 3. Memories in memory 3 are used to run our body and our thoughts. Memory 3 contains dormant memories. Dormant memories are ready to be triggered into our experience by an emotion or some content of an active memory. For example, if I ask, I'm reading the transcript here, I'm going to pause for just a minute. I'm reading the transcript here, but I highly recommend you go through and read it yourself. Now he's going to give an example. For example, if I ask you this question, oops, the question is not conscious yet because the question has not triggered the answer. So you don't know the answer. But if I ask, do you remember when you last rode a bicycle? There, the question will trigger the dormant answer. The answer or memory awakened or popped into your active experience. Do you understand so far? So he's going through and making sure, yeah, I get it logically. I think I know it's understanding, but at the same time, he's teaching, or we are teaching the subconscious how to do this work. And then he goes on to the active experience, which is C. This active experience, we're going to explain how our behavior and thoughts form. So our thoughts and behaviors start to form. And here we have what I call the active experience. The active experience represents all the activity in the brain and body related to survival. It is where all our internal and external sensory experience, all our internal processes, and the main personality are active. It includes all the content and emotion memories triggered in our experience that are used to form the next response. The creation of behavior is a recurrent process, which means that our last response is the basis for the next response. So I love this theory. It makes sense on my past experience and looking back and how the body responds. So he goes on to say, for example, I'm moving my hand to scratch my ear, my nose starts tickling. This new stimulation will result in changing the direction where my hand is going. My hand will then scratch my nose. And so he goes on and he explains how trauma starts and the end of trauma, and how sometimes these trauma parts will bleed into or even take over the main personality. And I highly recommend you go through and you read the entire transcript. We're not here to read the whole transcript, but definitely read the whole transcript. And you may have to read it a couple of times. Just moving this back over here. Read it a couple times. I've read it several times, and each time it feels like the subconscious becomes more clear, becomes more clear, becomes more clear. And even what's happening in my external experience, something gets triggered internally, I feel a tightness, my subconscious goes to work because I've set an anchor for my subconscious to go ahead and go to work once I become aware of something. Very good. And so the summary. The chapters were written in this way to give a feeling for the flexibility and creativity that is fostered by this process and this procedure. And problem solving with this theory involves a conceptual shift. So he's talking about maybe traditionally trained therapists to shift their thinking, maybe think out of the box a little bit. And open up to what you're seeing and what you're experiencing, and the possibility of even the subconscious treating you, teaching you a thing or two as well. And so when you grasp the concepts of the theory, this knowledge will allow you to be intuitive with the theory to help you solve complex treatment barriers. So chapter 3 is going to give all of the information for teaching the process healing method to yourself and to others. And it gets into a lot more detail. Very good. I think that is everyone. And I would love for you to subscribe to our channel, because we are getting ready to work on part 3 of the book. And part 3 really gets more into the doing of it. And wow, we went over a lot today, didn't we? Trying to get my mind map all accordion filed back, scrunched again. We went over a lot of information today. This is a lot of information. I highly encourage you, get the free download. If anything, go ahead and get the book and keep practicing this, because you get to a point, especially if you've been doing personal development and spiritual development. This is both personal and spiritual, and has the possibility to create massive reprogramming, massive changes. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen. So with that said, I am Denny Van, and I help you accelerate your personal and spiritual growth. I hope you benefited greatly from this part 2 of 3 series of this wonderful book, and I look forward to part 3. And remember to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any of these releases. Keep being your awesome self.